Happy October and welcome back to Budget Wa. Today we'll be talking over the new Battlescroll Galatian Reinforcements rules updates released by GW on the Warhammer community website. So Games Workshop have done a very good job this edition of keeping Age of Sigmar balanced and overall a very fun game to play. I don't think there's ever been a better time to get into the game than right now, and it's nice to see that they're continuing to focus on this. Today they released a new Battlescroll update, which if you're not familiar with these are PDF rules updates that Games Workshop releases periodically in between larger rules releases, such as the General's Handbook. They've stated that their balance goals for the game are threefold. In terms of external balance, meaning how well one faction is balanced against all the other factions in the game, they're aiming for all factions to have a win rate between 45 and 55%. As you can see by this chart from their MetaWatch data gathered from tournaments, they're doing quite a good job of this. The fat middle remains strong, as some like to say, with the majority of factions falling between 45 and 55%. You can see that some factions highlighted in green at the top are overperforming, and there's a couple of factions that are underperforming, including my favorite, the Cruel Boys, who are thematically biding their time for their moment, which may be now, which we'll talk about in a minute. In terms of internal balance, meaning how well a battle tome is balanced within itself, i.e. how viable are the options inside of your battle tome to actually run on the table, they're looking for at least 60% of war scrolls to be used in at least 5% of army rosters, and they've made some adjustments to the points to make some weaker units perhaps more enticing to play with. And then lastly, in terms of universal options, they have been pushing for universal war scrolls such as endless spells and universal enhancements such as arcane tome to be less used than things that you get out of your own battle tome, and they want those in less than 10% of army rosters. Traditionally and throughout 3rd edition, we've seen people really making a lot of use out of things like arcane tome and things like the Incarnate and several universal endless spells have seen a lot of play, so they made some adjustments there as well. Perhaps my favorite update from this Battlescroll is not a rules update in itself, but a change in how they're organizing the rules. One complaint of mine has been that there are a lot of rules for this game in a lot of different places, and they're taking active steps to address this. From now on, there's only ever going to be one active battle scroll, so the most recent battle scroll will be the definitive battle scroll. And the nice thing with this is that rule changes will carry over and continue to be printed in the active battle scroll. And they will stay in the battle scroll until they're printed in a rule book, such as a General's Handbook. New rules will be highlighted in magenta, so they're easy to spot what's new in this battle scroll versus the old one. And points updates will be summarized at the end, and those won't carry over into the new one, which isn't really that big of a deal because they're going to be easily accessible in the app and on War Scroll Builder. And then all of the changes will be included in their relevant errata documents. This is something I was very happy to see, just to keep some consistency between the errata and the battle scroll. It'll be in both places, but the battle scroll will be one easy place to see all the new rules updates. So diving into the actual rules changes, we'll start off with the endless spells. The only endless spell that's been changed here is the Purple Sun of Shaiish. And this nerf, of course, was put into effect several weeks ago, but I'm glad that they've kind of highlighted it here in the new battle scroll, and they have highlighted it in magenta as new, since it wasn't in the last battle scroll. And if you hadn't heard, what happened is they've reduced the insta-kill range from 3 inches to 1 inch, and if your model has 10 wounds or more, it isn't instant killed on a 1, it just suffers d6 plus 6 mortal wounds. I want to go ahead and cover the points changes here rather than at the end for the endless spells. Cogs, Lauchon the Soul Seeker, the Purple Sun, and Umbral Spell Portal, all powerful endless spells that we're seeing a lot of play on the tournament scene, have gone up in points fairly significantly. Cogs up 30 points, the Purple Sun and the Boltman are both up 20 points, and Umbral Spell Portal is up 10. Notably, the Kronspine Incarnate of Gur, which has been quite strong in a number of lists, has gone up a whopping 80 points, which is the highest points increase of anything we'll see throughout. This, of course, is not an endless spell, but they included it in this block of additional profiles, so wanted to mention it here. Another thing to note is that you'll notice later in the presentation that despite being overperforming, Daughters of Cain and Disciples of Tzeentch have not seen any other nerfs, and Games Workshop is targeting the Kronspine Incarnate because they have found it to be quite useful in some builds for those armies rather than any of their bespoke war scrolls. So we'll see how that works out. Beasts of Chaos have seen a slight change to their Primal Roar Monstrous Rampage. It's been slightly nerfed. Now it's a roll of dice, and on a 3-up you receive 1 Primordial Call point. This is nerfed from it used to be on a 2-up you received a point, and on a 6 you would spike and get 3 points. So not a drastic change, but a little bit of a power reduction for this Rampage. The only other armies to see specific rules changes are the Cruel Boys and Gloomspite Gits, which have been found to be underperforming through much of 3rd edition. Finally, the Swamp Kala Shaman will actually get to cast some of the powerful Lore of the Swamp spells, which is something that I expect many Cruel Boys players are quite excited about. I played many a game where I never cast a single spell because the poison ability is so crucial on these guys. But now they just removed that text, and you can now cast spells and use your poisons and elixirs ability both, which is great. Gloomspite Gits have gotten a nice option for Spiderfang focused armies, and the Arachnarok Spider with Spiderfang War Party is now a battle line option if your general has the Spiderfang keyword. Next, we'll discuss points changes, starting with Order and specifically Cities of Sigmar. They've seen a number of fairly hefty points decreases for lesser used units within their battle tone, specifically the Charybdis and War Hydra, the 2 black dragons with different riders and their executioners. Seraphon have seen a number of nerfs, particularly with Lord Croak, the Engine of the Gods, the Skink Priest, Landstar Master, all up by 20 or 30 points, whereas the Saurus Old Blood on Carnosaur and Skink Oracle and Troglodon, which haven't been seeing as much pay, were both decreased 20 points to 250 points. I like what they've done with Stormcast Eternals in that they, rather than nerfing their stronger units, have offered points decreases, pretty significant ones for units that just haven't been seeing very much play. Some of the things to notice are that the Vanquishers have seen a 15-point drop. Your Knight Relictor is down 20 points. Yndrasta is down a whopping 40 points. And then the 2 Dragon Heroes are both down a whopping 50 points each. Making them maybe a little more viable to play. Your Annihilators and Praetors, which both come in the Dominion set, are down 20 points. And notice that the Annihilators, it's actually only the ones with the Great Shield that are down, as largely the ones with the Great Hammers have been seeing more play. They seem pretty cheap now. So be interesting to see if that's enticing enough for people to switch over to the more defensive Annihilator option. One thing to notice is that this does reduce the overall value in terms of points of the Dominion box by 80 points. It's not really a huge deal, but just something to keep in mind is whereas the Dominion box used to have kind of a 1,500 point starter army right from the bat, be a little farther from that overall, but not a huge deal. Beasts of Chaos, which has been one of the highest performing armies in the current meta, is seeing some points increases just to the Cockatrice and Dragon Ogres units, in addition to the change to their Monstrous Rampage. It's interesting to point out here, as many of us may remember, it used to be a running joke that Beasts of Chaos were the worst army in the game. So just kind of a good reminder that there's going to be ebbs and flows to the power level of any army. So if you love them, stick with them. They'll have their day in the sun. They'll have their lows, but I hope to see Beast of Chaos remain still a competitive force, maybe just not 68% win rate. Hedonites of Slaanesh, on the other hand, have seen a number of much needed points decreases, particularly to their demonettes are now only 110 points. Also nice to see Glutos going down to 30 points. He's a great looking model, just hasn't been seeing a lot of play, at least not in my local meta, but on the competitive scene either. Maggotkin of Nurgle have seen some points increase across the board. Quite a strong army, and you're seeing points increase to the Puscoil Blight Lords, your Lord of Afflictions, which is a kind of a very powerful component of your army with that teleport ability and the mobility that a lot of Nurgle units are lacking. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Interestingly, both of those are included in the Vanguard box, so you are getting a little more points if you do pick up the Vanguard box, getting you a little closer to your 2,000 point list, which is silver lining if you're interested in Nurgle. Skaven have seen points decreases across a number of units, including the Doom Wheel, Screech Vermin King, and their Vermintide Endless Spell, and a couple other heroes. Death is seeing some point decreases across the board, with the exception of Night Haunt, which did not see any changes this Battlescroll and is in quite a good place from a balance standpoint. Flesh Eater Quartz, the Royal Terrorgeist, and Royal Zombie Dragon without riders are seeing some point decreases, giving you a little more incentive to take the version that don't have the Ghoul King on top. Ossiarch Bone Reapers have seen some point decrease across the board, including in the Mortek Crawler, Gothazar Harvester, your Necropolis Stalkers, all pretty core, useful components of your army, hopefully giving them a little more of an edge in the game. Soulblight Gravelords similarly have seen points decreases of 20 to 25 points across a lot of units, particularly some units that have been weaker in the past, such as the White King or White King on Steed, the Bloodseeker Palanquin, and notably Neferata saw a 20-point decrease as well. And lastly, getting to some of the changes I'm most excited about, Gloomspite Gits have seen a lot of points decreases in a lot of their battle line units. Shudas and Stabas are both down 20 and 10 points respectively. The Mangler Squigs are down 25 points. Your Skitterstrand Arachnarok is down 20. Scragrot the Loon King is down 20. The Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs is also down. Your Spider Riders are down, your Squig Herd is down. Hopefully this will be enough to give Gloomspite Gits a much needed boost until they get their new Battle Tome. And then in Auric War Clans, mostly seeing discounts with the exception of Bone Splitters, which again I find amusing as when a lot of people first saw the Battle Tome, there wasn't a lot of excitement about the Bone Splitters. It felt like, oh, the Arrow Boys have been nerfed, the army's not going to work. But turns out the army is working very well, just in a very different way, and a much more orky way of lots of bodies charging across the table. With that aside, Cruel Boys are the biggest winners here. With Beast Skewer Killbow is now a lot more playable at 110 points. It's now cheaper than the Man Skewer Bolt Boys. I love running it in the first place, and I was very happy to see this one in particular. Gut Rippas are down 20 points, which has been a big request from Cruel Boys players. The 180 times 3 tax on your army, as Gut Rippas were the only battle line for a long time unless you played Big Yellers. This is a lot more reasonable for what they do. Also, the Killaboss and Great Nashtooth, who is a better hero than I think he gets credit for, is now, I think, could potentially punch above his weight a little bit at only 150 points for a 10 wound hero with a 3-up save and some pretty decent attacks and good mobility. Gobsprak is down, the Killaboss and Corpse Reaper Vulture is down, which both much needed. And then also, interestingly, the Snatcher Boss on Sludge Raker Beast and Swamp Boss Scumdrek, who have been some of the more powerful options in the army, are down 25 and 30 points. So I think hopefully Cruel Boys will see a little bit of a power increase. But I would like to say between this and the Swamp Collar Shaman thing, I don't think they've taken too heavy of a hand to it. This might just be enough to kind of push them up into that more of like a 45 to 50% win rate range. Bone Splitters, like I mentioned, got some nerfs. Wargog Prophet with his powerful stare ability, which I've seen lift a unit of Varangard in battle reports. It's pretty funny. He's up to 170 points, which is fair, although I'm sad because I just picked one up about a week ago before he got nerfed. And then the Savage Big Stabbas and Savage Boar Boy Maniacs are up 20 and 10 points respectively. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please let me know in the comments down below or consider giving us a like. And yeah, let me know which rules changes you're excited about. If you think there were any misses here, I think this has been a very solid battle scroll and the second solid battle scroll on a roll. So I'm quite excited to see the state of the game right now, and I hope this continues. Anyway, until next time, keep painting those minis and see ya.